So, the Geek Show's back, and on our first episode, we were talking about falling out of love with video games, mainly from the industry side. And the elephant in the room was the games themselves. But before we talked about that particular elephant and what type of elephant it is, we wanted to look at why the elephant is in the room in the first place. So, that's the first episode. Today, it's time for the elephant. Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm a Rob, so serious, I've got two collars on.
I've only just noticed. And welcome to the Geek Show for our second episode of our new, improved, new show. Yeah.
Old show, new format.
Yes.
We'll get you to say words one day, Rob. We'll get you to say words one
Words
day.
are hard. The most I can manage is elephant in games.
Yeah. So, what we doing this time, aren't we?
We're doing part 2 of falling out of love with video games, and we're talking about the elephant in the room, which is the games themselves. And yeah, where do you start?
Well, I think I can start through anecdotal thing. My experience of video games, it was like varied for a while. I started as a Sega boy. Not even started as a Sega boy. I started with a ZX Spectrum because that's all my family could afford. Then I got a Master System, Mega Drive, Dreamcast.
Yeah.
Then they fell out of business. Became a games developer rather than a publisher as well. So I went over, got a Nintendo 64. Then I became a Sony all the way since. And around the end of PlayStation 4, I thought, I kind of had enough. I want something new, something different. And I was pestering Rob and anybody who I knew was talking about, who knew about video games so much, I was annoying myself. So what I think other people were like with me being like that, I don't know. And the reason I was like that is because I just think I was so underwhelmed with games. I wanted something new. I got the Xbox. That wasn't the issue. Didn't feel like I was renewed. Got the PlayStation 5, didn't really solve the issue. So for me, the only real sort of conclusion that I can draw is just games are so whelming now. Not whelming as in not over or under, just whelming. Games are so whelming now, it hurts.
Yeah, I tend to describe modern games as beige.
Yeah.
They're very beige, aren't they? I remember several years ago, it was after Horizon Zero Dawn had come out.
Yes.
And you and I were standing in a second-hand video store.
The big red sex shop.
Yes, that's actually what it's called.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we were standing there, and you were thinking about buying Horizon Zero Dawn. And I took one look at it and immediately said, generic third-person action adventure.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is a term that can literally be applied to the majority of third-person action adventures now. If it's not a third-person action adventure with a little bit of climbing and platforming and some light RPG elements, then it's a first-person shooter of some sort. Maybe it's a first-person hero shooter or a first-person arena shooter of some sort. Although I don't think arena shooters you get anymore.
Long story short, there's never been less variety than there is now.
Exactly. And when you look at video games in the modern era, you look at a game like Vampire Survivor, right? Vampire Survivor is such a simple game.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of what it is, right? Such a simple game. Oh, look, I have one guy, he's going around killing loads of vampires. It's just basically hordes and hordes of vampires. It's basically asteroids.
With vampires.
Vampires and better and more loot and better firepower and blah blah blah. But it's basically just asteroids.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all it is. And when you look at it in those terms, it's pure gameplay. And it's not the only game of that type where it was just pure gameplay that appealed to the masses, and they
Yeah.
had fun with it. It's the old arcade cabinet where you basically played the side-scrolling shoot 'em up or the vertical scrolling shoot 'em up and tried to get the high score.
True, it was that.
Because you had bragging rights then. It's basically going back to that. And for video games to degenerate effectively back to that, because all of the technological advancements, all of that knowledge, all of that ability, all of that imagination is basically not there. And you go back to the essential foundation of video games, which is, I'm sorry, but I'm waiting for some kind of game to come out where you basically have what is effectively bat and ball.
Well, there's other perspectives to take here. I mean, for me, it's that figure of speech, isn't it? The rod that sticks out gets hammered down.
Yeah,
it's probably not rod, but
nail.
you know,
The nail.
the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, because every game any experiment to be different,
Yeah,
inevitably fails unless it's one of these lightning in a bottle moments. And then if it doesn't fail, that means everything else is going to follow it after that lightning in a bottle moment. So everything has this sense of uniformity, really. Even the stories, I don't think the stories are particularly trying to be bold or original. So I'm going to say this here. Spoilers for Horizon Forbidden West. The original Horizon, spoilers for that too, was essentially about Aloy coming to terms that she didn't have anywhere to belong in the world. She found out who she was. She found her people, which weren't based on tribe. They were just the people that she liked. And she found her place and how she belonged and her responsibility and her role in the world, which is a story that all of us can really relate to.
Yeah. But
I think so, anyway.
There's a but there.
In the sequel, forget all that. She's an arsehole now who wants to do everything herself for the first half of the game. And then in the second half of the game, it installs this new sort of threat. The Zeniths, I think they were called, if memory serves. And essentially, it spins out into the ending being this incredibly dumb, like 8-year-old came up with a story beat, which sets up the future of a franchise, which I was initially interested in, but the story is so dumb. The story is so dumb. And that's kind of very emblematic of movie story and video games now, that the story is really, really dumb. And when it's a one-player game, let's get my words right, the story is very, very key to enjoyment. And when the story is when you feel like, I can't be bothered with this story, I'm just going to skip it all. Again, the way you connect with characters is you grow a respect and an adoration for them, and when you skip because it's so boring, well, I don't think I need to fill out any more thoughts there, really, do I?
Yeah, and I know I tend to bash on certain games and pick on certain games in particular, but part of the reason for the lackluster storytelling in video games, part of the reason I think has to do with World of Warcraft and the influence it's had over video games as an industry.
You really don't like World of Warcraft, do you?
It's not that I don't like World of Warcraft. I just do not like the way that the game has influenced the video games industry adversely. Because for a lot of World of Warcraft players, they don't pay attention to the story. And unfortunately, World of Warcraft players, the likes of, your major World of Warcraft players who are also big name streamers, your likes of Asmongold and that, right? If they don't want to pay attention to the story in a game, other people will take their cues from them. So the story becomes less important.
What's that thing in America? It's basically like there's a TV thing, like a Nielsen box or something that they have.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're on about. Yeah,
because that feels very much like that. like some sort
Yeah,
of sample family, which is like the test family for all of the TV trends and
yeah.
likes and dislikes.
So basically, if your streamer that you like doesn't like video game stories, doesn't want to pay attention to them, just wants to get to the good part, the action, is only about playing the game, hardcore action, go go go, you're not going to want to pay attention to the story either. So the story becomes less important in video games development. And when the story is less important, you don't pay much attention to it. You just basically say, right, we just want something to hold things together. Doesn't matter about the characters. We don't care about them.
Look at
This is all that
Forsaken.
people want.
Look at
Yeah,
Forsaken. That was a
Forspoken. You mean?
yeah. It's so generic. I forgot its name.
Yeah. I mean, just the dialogue in that game is, oh my god, I want it to hit people. I rarely want to hurt people.
You liar.
No, I mainly want to hurt people because they're dumb, and I deal with a lot of dumb people in my job. But that's a side thing. I rarely want to hurt people who are in the creative industries because I always want to give them leeway.
Yeah.
But when it came to Forspoken, it wasn't the people who were having to write the dialogue. It wasn't the voice actors or anyone like that. I wanted to find the executive who okayed that dialogue, who wanted that dialogue to be like that because it was going to be hip and trendy, and I wanted to find them and punch them in the balls.
All right. What you do in the privacy of your own room is your business, Rob.
Punching people in the balls.
Yeah. You hinted.
But no, anyway,
you did.
Forspoken's dialogue.
You did touch on something that I want to bring up there, but
What, punching people in the balls?
no, the word hardcore.
Yes. We'll come back to that. We'll circle back around to that. But yeah,
Okay.
the story becomes less important in video games development, in the video games development cycle. And when the story becomes less important, you and I, as individual players, don't really want to play the game.
And there's a lot of people from our generations that are like that.
The unfortunate effect of that over a long-term period is that people become less able to write a good story for video games. And a prime example of that for me is The Last of Us 2.
Don't open that kind of worms. You know how the internet was with that one.
Yeah, but it was basically two games in one. Both stories should have been individual games, right? Both stories should have been individual games and they should never have been joined together in the way they were. But also the lack of agency when it came to Ellie's story, because by the time...
Just to stop you there, because that's not a common term that a lot of people are fair with, but agency, how do you mean by agency?
Right, okay. So, let me explain a little bit about how... Well, most people don't understand revenge, right? Most people don't, because it's not an emotion that the Western world is acquainted with. You might get your own back on certain people, but actual vengeance, you don't really understand. You don't know how deep the emotions go. You don't know what is necessary for it. The Japanese have a thing about revenge. There was an anime series called Hellgirl in Japan, and it was all about revenge. And if you've never seen it, you can give it a try. It might not be to your taste, but it is very much more of a horror series, right? And the whole idea of it was people who have been wronged in a certain way. Maybe one of their relatives, their close relatives, has been murdered, or something bad has happened, whatever. What you can do, you can basically make a wish for revenge, for vengeance against that person, but that comes at a price, because that person will go to hell, but so will you. And that kind of gives you an idea as to why the Western world doesn't understand what vengeance is, because it's not one soul you're consigning to damnation, it's two, because you will suffer the consequences of that as well.
Yeah.
And that is something that they alluded to a degree in The Last of Us 2. But this is where the agency comes in, because by the time Joel's, well, I mean, spoilers, right, for Last of Us 2, if you've never played it, but by the time Joel is killed, Ellie already doesn't like him. And she's in a loving relationship with a kid. And no matter how much you like or dislike somebody, the moment you look at that child, the moment you look at your family, you start to put things in perspective. And there was no option within that game where you could say, I have a family to protect. That is more important than me going to get vengeance for somebody who I didn't like at this point, just because of some memories.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by agency. You couldn't choose option B, which was not to go out and chase somebody for revenge.
That's not exclusive to The Last of Us, though. Lots of games are guilty of that.
It's not exclusive to
cognitive dissonance. I can't remember the full term.
What was it?
Whatever it is, the point is, it's like in the story of Tomb Raider. In the story of Tomb Raider,
narrative dissonance.
Yeah, the idea in the story is, I don't want to kill anybody. Don't make me kill anybody. Oh, killing people so scary. And she's basically wearing a hat made out of people's scrotums and a chain of ears because she's killed so many people.
Yeah. After her first adverse reaction to killing someone, next thing you know, she's basically playing her own version of Manhunt.
She's Rambo.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally gone from Tomb Raider to Manhunt at that point, hasn't it?
But still, the story is, I don't want to kill, I don't want to kill.
Yeah.
But gameplay, oh, you're killing.
Yeah.
You're killing everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because there's no option B. And this comes back to something that I'm going to bring up Shenmue. I have to bring up Shenmue for this, right? And it's a shame about what happened with Shenmue 3. I think Yu Suzuki was a bit maybe set in the ways that Shenmue 2 had been developed. It'd be nice if, maybe they could redo it, but I don't think that's going to happen. But the reason I bring up Shenmue is because there's something that happens in video games, and you touched on it and I've touched on it, but we haven't really spoken about it, and nobody ever does, right? Between one game and another, especially if that game is a direct sequel to the first game, like The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2, right? Your character effectively becomes reset to zero. They have to learn things like how to run, how to fire a bow and arrow, how to do certain things. And
from a mechanical sense, you can understand, because every game is every first game. Not every game is someone's potential first game, but at the same time, it completely upends sort of the growth of the story.
Yeah, and this is why I bring up Shenmue, because Shenmue 1 and 2 was the first time in video games where I'd seen I completed the first game and I started the second game, and my save file from the first game became active in the second game. So all of the moves that I practiced in the first game, I already had. All of the money and the items that I had in the first game, when I ended, I had at the beginning of the second game. Yes, you get robbed at the beginning of the second game and all your money goes, but there is a way around that.
Your skills remain, though.
Your skills remain. You basically, if you end the first Shenmue game as like a hardcore fighting addict who's basically going to kick anyone's ass, you start the second game as that hardcore fighting addict who's going to kick anyone's ass.
And for me, the problem is there's no renegades in video games. There's nobody who's willing to take a risk. The fact that everybody knows who's the executive in charge of a company. I don't care who the executive in charge of a company is. I don't care about the executive of any company. But the fact that I know them, and I don't know any video game developer beyond Hideo Kojima, I mean,
I was about to say the Hideo Kojima fans in the audience will take issue and umbrage at what you just said.
I'm not a big fan of him. I think he jumped the shark with the last Metal Gear Solid. I didn't like that at all. I lost a lot of respect for him with that. But he is one of the renegades of our times, and he's basically alone, as in somebody who is willing to take risks and willing to really change how video game language is. Everybody else is sort of happy, just same old, same old. And when
Yeah.
everything's same old, you kind of just zone out.
I
Really.
will admit, Death Stranding, right? I'm not a big fan of the game, but I will say this, right? As as an experience and as an experiment into what you can do with video games, I think it's very, very successful.
Well, in a more pure level, he was brave enough to try,
Yeah,
and that means a lot to me.
yeah. And I have immense respect for him for wanting to try, for wanting to do something different. And we don't have enough of that. And the reason why we don't have enough of that, I mentioned in the previous episode, is because in a lot of companies, if you have imagination and you want to do a specific thing, you get jumped on by the executives and the senior developers from a great height. I
Mm.
imagine something similar happened at Konami, but there are rumors that suggest that there was also a lot of money being hemorrhaged on Metal Gear Solid 5. Don't know how true those rumors are, but I imagine it's a combination of things, which is why he ended up having to leave Konami.
Yeah.
But, as his own projects, doing his own thing, he seems to be thriving.
He is. I mean, he's overstretching by thinking he can be a filmmaker when his stories are never coherent, but he's swinging large, and you can't take that away from him.
If you're going to go with Kojima, then you got to also acknowledge, you got to also acknowledge another. Well, they're not an individual developer, more of a company who tried to do things a little differently, which is Telltale. They tried to bring back the point and click adventure in a different way.
Yeah, they did evolve. Yeah, there's words. I found it eventually. They did evolve the point and click adventure to those adventure. Those games were adventure games. They were romps. They were
very narrative heavy, very story based. Okay, some of them weren't as good as others.
By any,
the Batman
true.
ones weren't as good as the Walking Dead ones. The Borderlands ones were actually pretty good.
Yeah, the Borderlands was good. The Wolf Among Us was good. The Borderlands one was great. Actually, it's the best Borderlands game there's been, which says very little, honestly.
Yeah, but Borderlands 3 wasn't really a good game.
But the point is, they tried something new, and the emotions and display, I don't think, have very rarely been equaled in video games. The end of number 1 is astounding, and it will break your heart unless you're a cold, unfeeling robot or David Cage, to give him his full name.
We don't talk about David Cage.
But stories in video games, there's no renegades, there's nobody who's got an interesting story to tell. And the ones that do are so squashed by the might of the industry that they may as well not exist. Like, I really like stuff like Night in the Woods. I thought that was telling a really interesting story. Emotional, low-stakes story, but with like sort of a fantastical edge. Those things are just squashed. And
what was that one that you played?
They're very, very hard to find because of the weight of the industry sort of just in them.
What was that one that you played? You described it as swamp opera.
I can't remember. It wasn't what I described it as. It's what the actual company described it as. I can't remember, but it was swamp opera. The name's gone. But yeah, that was a great game because basically it was about a young teenage girl looking after her grandfather in an island which is inhabited lots by sort of monsters and sausage monsters and all sorts of things, and you had to go about and plant things to sort of resolve the emotional state of that person. Make their garden.
Spiritfarer is another one that kind of is in that vein,
but it's squashed under the weight of the industry.
Yeah.
It's look at that, the crappy 8-bit graphics, and people never know what 8-bit graphics are, but they say it's always 8-bit. It's not.
See, this is the thing, and this is the fundamental problem with a lot of understanding of video games. Unless you have played 8-bit games, you don't know what 8-bit graphics look like, because what you're describing is actually 16-bit, not 8-bit, right?
That's so pedantic, though, isn't it?
No, it's accurate. It's not pedantic, because an 8-bit graphic, right? I challenge any of them to find anything from games like manic miner to be attractive.
Yeah, I think the
Because they won't find
Messenger.
it attractive.
The Messenger had 16-bit graphics, I think.
The
I think it
Messenger.
had 8-bit and 16-bit graphics. That was a cool game.
I mean, that's the thing. 16-bit can be attractive because there's more to work with. You can put more details on. But 8-bit's
But
basically a block with things missing.
the other part of this, which has helped me fall out of love with video games, is that phrase hardcore.
Yeah.
I think Dead Souls has so much to answer for.
Dead Souls?
Dead Souls, Dark Souls, and
Dark Souls. Dark Souls, yeah.
I don't care. Point is, these are games that don't respect your time.
No.
There's so many people say, get good, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, get good. But they don't respect your time. The fact that you can play for 4 hours and then you die and then that 4 hours is lost. It's just people of like, if when you get to a certain age, and I'm not saying like 30s, 40s, whatever, even in your 20s, you have limited time to play games because you go to work, you come home, you've got your obligations, you've got family, friends, social life, whatever. So when you play games, you got to make it count. And you can play a game for a number of hours and then, dead, gone. No progress. What was all that for then? It's just no respect of the actual player's time. And I find those games really annoying. And its prevalence is that it's actually seeping out past the games that those things traditionally are into other genres.
Yeah. I mean, there are more and more Souls-like games now. And there are more and more games where the whole point of the game is to somehow punish you for playing the game. And like, life is hard enough already. And the last time somebody said to me, get good, do you know what my response was?
What?
Get a fucking job.
Yes. Quite.
Because at the end of the day, it's some kid trying to tell me to be good at a game that I'm not enjoying. And, as I said, life is hard enough. I play games for escapism. If I'm not getting that escapism, I'm not going to play the game. Yeah. And at some point, people in the video games industry will start realizing that their audience is getting older. We want games that cater to us. We want games that appreciate our time. And just like I've said with the anime industry and the animation industry in general, your audience is aging. Stop catering to the kids who don't have the money to pay for your overpriced merchandise. Cater to the people who have jobs, who want to be supporting the industry and have the ability to pay £70 for a game. But if you're not making a game that I want to play, I'm not going to buy it. And I'm certainly not going to give my children the money to buy it if I'm not going to play it myself. So get with the program.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to last week's episode or whatever week it was. I can't remember. Time is a flat circle. It's the industry just needs to sort of grow up.
Yeah.
And realise who the people who enjoy this pastime are. It's not young kids who go to arcades and flip 50p's to play games. It's not hardcore weird people who run every stream. The average gamer is the same person who watches TV. It's the same person who goes to the movie. It's everybody and it's anybody.
Yeah.
And I think games need to start respecting that and stop tailoring it to this increasingly marginalised, niche, hardcore, obsessive stereotype.
Toxic.
Yeah,
they're very toxic. If you're not one of them, then you're basically what they define as a filthy casual. And this is one of the reasons why
I'm super happy to be a filthy casual. Not just because it's the name of a podcast that I have a love-hate relationship with, but also because I'm a filthy casual. Screw you for belittling me.
But this is one of the reasons why I hate the term gamer.
Yeah.
Because, as I've said on so many other occasions, you don't have a word that defines somebody who goes... I mean, you can call them a cinephile if you want, someone who watches movies.
If somebody calls himself a
bibliophile.
If somebody needs to call himself a cinephile or a bibliophile, you just slap them and walk out the room. I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous.
Because they're being pretentious.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I find someone calling themselves a gamer to be in that vein. It's pretentious as anything, and why would you
Gatekeeping.
want? Yeah, it's gatekeeping. You're basically saying that unless you're a gamer of some sort, or somehow you live your life by video games, you're not allowed to play them. And I say, well, bugger that for a game of soldiers.
That's the most English thing you've said in a while. But yeah, I mean, how to conquer this for me, it comes down to the basically similar lessons from last time's episode. I've stopped engaging with what the mainstream deems cool of video games, and I'm just doing me.
Yeah,
You do you, I do me, and I'm really enjoying games now because I'm doing me, and me rocks,
yeah,
Rob. And I'm not saying that in a sort of a facetious way. Everybody's got to think that. If you don't think your taste is amazing, well then what's wrong with you?
yeah,
And just focus on what you like and stop trying to fit in with this idea of what a gamer is. You do you, you enjoy you. That's it. And I think
yeah, exactly.
the love of games is slowly seeping back. It won't come up.
And
Won't happen overnight, but it's returning bit by bit. For me, anyway.
the sad thing is, there are so many games out there, that are worth your time, that will give you the escapism that you want, or give you that rush of gameplay that you've been craving, and that will appeal to so many people, of all levels.
Yeah.
No matter how much you want to immerse yourself in video games, there is a game for you. It's just, it might not be obvious. You might have to dig a little deeper. It won't be one of the games that's being covered by some streamer somewhere, or some mainstream press, or the whatever video games press is talking about. Doesn't matter. You might have to dig down and find it yourself. But find it you will. And it may not be a more recent game, it may be a slightly older game. But you have 40 years of video games to go through.
Yeah.
You're
And
going to find something.
It's the only industry where if it's not released in the last 18 months, it's garbage. And that's another really toxic attitude of the video game culture.
This is what I don't understand. I don't understand how something that has PS3 graphics can somehow be bad in the modern era. When the PS3 came out, we were saying, oh, look at the graphics. And then later on, you got PS4, PS5. Oh, we can't play anything with PS3 graphics. What did your eyes suddenly get worse?
Gamers, TM, are so conceited.
Yeah. Everything has to be in HD, otherwise we can't play it. But you're playing 16-bit games. Why can't you play a game with PS3 graphics if you're able to play 16-bit games, which have worse graphics?
Yeah.
We did an episode of Impossible Mission, which is also actually becoming part of the Geek Show now. As you probably noticed by the fact that the first two discussions on the Geek Show have been about games. So Impossible Mission is now the Geek Show as well. But on a previous episode of the Impossible Mission, or previous two episodes, we did Would You Rather Play AAA for a year or Indie for a year? And you and I were on different sides of the fence for those episodes.
Yeah.
You went AAA, I went Indie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a three-pronged question now. Would you rather play indie, AAA, or the things that fall in the gap between? And the mid-range games, I'd go for mid-range games every time.
The mid-range games have always been the most interesting for me, and they've been out of the loop for a long time. You had kind of the top-level indies, the low-level AAA, which were kind of bridging the gap to a degree, but now you've got more companies actually producing proper mid-range games.
Yeah, all my favourite games are mid-ranges.
Yeah, same. All the best games that I've played recently have been mid-range games. Some indies, more indies than AAA. Yeah. I honestly have, when it comes to AAA, the only AAA game that I am interested in playing at the moment is Final Fantasy 16. That's the only one. And that is the only one for about 2 years.
Well, and you're an RPG guy.
Thing is, yeah, I'm an RPG guy, but also I've played every other Final Fantasy game. So I'm more interested in playing that because I've played the others, and I want to see how they change in the franchise. Purely personal interest, not because I'm avidly looking forward to the game, but purely out of kind of more academic interest than anything else.
That's fine.
But yeah, mid-range and indies, I think, are the way forward for me. That's what's keeping me interested. That and Forza Horizon 5, that game continues to be a joy to me.
Yeah, just stay away from sort of the toxic environments of live service, pay-to-win microtransactions, AAA excess,
Yeah.
and just find what makes you happy. And I think that's the way to keep the love of games in your life, rather than becoming toxic and bitter and hating everything. Because that's just shortens your life, honestly, in a very literal sense. Rage and anger is just not good for you.
Damn it. Means I'm going to have to change my life.
Yeah, you do that. You do that. But
But I've lived for years on rage and anger.
No, I think that's a nice point to end on. You know,
Yeah.
not get rid of rage. It's bad for you. It gives you headaches, and that can't be good.
Yeah, your constant face of constipation just isn't attractive.
Cheers.
Not yours. Sorry, I just realized I made it sound as if I wasn't talking about you specifically. I was speaking rhetorically.
Yeah, no, just being facetious.
So, yeah, that's the second part of our falling out of love with video games discussion. Let us know what you think in the comments below, whether it's about the previous episode or this one. Let us know, and we'll be back on the next episode with a totally new discussion, possibly related to video games, maybe not, we'll see.
Movies.
So, yeah, until then, thanks for watching.